Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Monday, July 4th. Dry and breezy conditions will continue across the Great Basin, especially over southern and central areas of the basin and at times along the Sierra Front for the next several days. The winds will be strongest today, but not as strong as what we saw over the weekend over southern and eastern Nevada into western Utah, but still critical, especially with the July 4th holiday and with recent lightning, certainly the potential for spread when we see new starts or the potential for holdovers. As we move into Tuesday, Wednesday, these winds decrease but still remain breezy in about the same areas. Lightning will be very isolated in the far north today, but will increase somewhat on Tuesday over eastern Utah and over parts of the Uintas on Wednesday as moisture returns briefly before a more significant drying and warming trend. Precipitation over the last 24 hours has been fairly light and mainly just confined to the far north and areas north of the Great Basin. We did have some lightning yesterday into parts of central and eastern Idaho and a few lightning strikes over eastern Utah. Great Basin fire activity yesterday, we had over 20 new starts. However, all of these fires have remained on the smaller side for the most part. So we will see what the wind does today because we will see windy conditions over southern Nevada into Utah where we have had some new reports of fires. Over the last 7 to 14 days, we've had precipitation mainly across the eastern half of Utah, and some of this precipitation has been above normal for the time of year. Otherwise, very dry conditions continue over the western half of the Great Basin into southwest and western Idaho. Couple look at our ERC charts. First, over southern areas of the Great Basin, we did see the sharp decline with the moisture recently. However, ERCs have already been trending up and are above normal in many areas, and we will continue to see many of those areas increase in ERC, especially over this next week. Over northern Utah, ERCs have increased more significantly and are almost to the 90th percentile. We are seeing these higher ERCs also into Nevada, with ERCs climbing somewhat across Idaho as well. The satellite loop from this morning shows a trough flow pressure along the west coast, and this feature will remain mainly in place over the next several days, so we will see these breezy conditions ahead of this trough continue, although winds will be decreasing. Looking at the weather pattern for later today, again that drier southwest flow across Nevada and Utah, so we will see high risk for gusty winds and low humidity over southern and eastern Nevada into Utah. And again, many of these areas have had lightning recently, or at least within the last week, so we will see if we have any holdovers within these areas. Looking at the relative humidity and wind gusts for today, you can see relative humidity in the single digits to mainly low teens across Nevada and Utah. And the winds will not be as strong as what we saw yesterday, but we will see gusts in the 30s across Utah into eastern Nevada, and also along the Sierra Front, gusts 25 to 30. We'll also see some breezy winds up in central Idaho where we had lightning recently, but fuels are not quite as critical. As we move into Tuesday, we continue with this southwest flow pattern. We will see some moisture work its way back into eastern Nevada, so we will see a return of some thunderstorms, otherwise still dry and breezy conditions further west. Relative humidity increases over eastern Utah on Tuesday with that moisture return and remains low further west in the low teens. Winds, as you can see from the image on the right, still remain breezy in the same areas of Nevada and Utah that we have been seeing. However, wind gusts drop to mainly in the 20s, so they do decrease somewhat. As we move into Wednesday and really through the rest of the week, we continue with this pattern of a trough off the west coast and breezy southwest flow. We will have some moisture still over eastern Utah, so we will still continue the potential for some isolated lightning strikes on Wednesday. And then looking at the relative humidity, we do have a little bit more drier air into eastern Utah, so much of the storms will be along the Colorado border or up into the Uintas. Wind gusts on Wednesday also remain breezy. They may increase a little bit over parts of southwest Nevada, but for the most part, gusts in the upper 20s to around 30 miles per hour. 3-day precipitation, any precipitation we get in the far north or over eastern areas will be spotty and fairly light with these thunderstorms. As we go through the rest of the week, we'll continue to see dry and breezy conditions with the trough off the west coast. The ridge of high pressure in the Four Corners area will continue building and building back into the Great Basin, so we will continue to see warming temperatures through the week. On our significant fire potential map, you'll also see a lot more yellow and brown, especially pushing further north and west as we go through the week with these hot temperatures. Friday, winds might peak a little bit, especially over western areas. We may see the winds increase from what we'll see from the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday period, just with this trough moving into the Pacific Northwest, otherwise still dry and breezy. These dry conditions continue into Saturday, still breezy winds, and into Sunday as well. We will likely see a significant drying trend for all of the Great Basin after these storms that move through the next couple of days for eastern Utah. we'll see a drying trend possibly for a week. So we will see fuels become more and more critical across the Great Basin by this time next week. The warming temperatures, again, we'll continue to see gradually warming temperatures through the week. Our lowest temperatures will be today, where we'll see highs in the 80s along the western periphery of the Great Basin and in the mid to upper 90s over eastern areas of the basin and the lower elevations. By later this week into the weekend, we will see temperatures peak around 100 degrees or over 100 degrees for Salt Lake, in the low 90s in western Nevada, and even in the low 90s in parts of Idaho. No real change in the 7-day total precipitation, as any precipitation will fall here in the next few days with thunderstorm activity. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook shows warmer conditions for the Great Basin with drier conditions along the western side of the basin, but we will see the monsoon moisture return, it looks like by mid-month. Somewhere around late in the second week of the month or towards the third week of the month, we will see that moisture return more for Utah and the Four Corners area and still remain fairly dry across much of Idaho into western Nevada. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.